Hey, hello to my friends and partners from all over the world. Welcome to this IML edition of the Pega Partner Hour, a monthly webinar that provides Pega partners with support in the sales, technical, and today, the industry domains. As a reminder, we will be recording this session. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to drop from the call, and you're welcome to watch these recordings at a later time. You can find them all on the Pega Partner portal and on the YouTube channel, which is the Pega Partner Hour. And here it is again for you early planners. And really, is it ever too early? Registration is open for Pega World, held again this year in Las Vegas from June 7th to June 9th. The thing to remember, early registration brings lower costs. So if that's something that interests you, please find your way to pegaworld.com. All right, listen, let's jump right into it. Today's lineup is really, it's unbelievable. Let me say it to you this way. The other day I was talking to Alan Truffler. Yeah, I talk to Alan sometimes. No, it wasn't Alan, but I was talking to somebody in our background here at Pega, and they asked me who was going to be on the show. And the first thing they said when I told them, they said, "How did you get all of those people on one panel?" And I think that speaks to the level of expertise that these folks have today. And if you've ever tried to set time with these gentlemen, you know their calendars are packed. And I think that's what happens when your expertise moves the needle as much as these folks do. They're rare experts. They're in such demand because they are in the know. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome today's Pega Partner Hour, Doug Averill, Ryan Walton King, Doug Stitzer, and Steve Morgan, the industry market leaders here at Pega. And with that, let's jump right in. As a way to get started, I'm hoping to start by asking Doug Averill, for the folks here who don't know on the call, for our partners, can you help explain to them what exactly do the industry teams do here at Pega?
Yeah, great. And always good to be with you here, Randy. And thank you. So what do the industry teams do at Pega? We've got this amazing platform. We've got this incredibly differentiated blueprint tool that is changing the way people are developing and delivering applications. And what the industry team does is really kind of two things. One, we're really the voice of the industry in Pega. So when it comes to what does the industry do, what's happening in the industry, what sort of product changes need to happen at Pega, how do we talk about things at Pega that are going to resonate with our industry? That's our job and our team's job. We are advocates for the industry in which we have often served and represent, and we've got a global team across all of us that are here to listen to what's actually happening. And then externally, we're the face of Pega within the industry. So we'll be at industry events, we'll be at shows, things like the demos that are happening at Pega World, as you said, Randy. A lot of those things are very specific and driven by the industry teams themselves. So we are what industry is in Pega and what Pega is in an industry.
Thanks, Doug. And Doug, everybody here on this audience has seen you, as we were talking about many times. But for those maybe who are new to the show, could you introduce yourself, tell them who you cover and
Sure.
what
Yeah.
specifically?
So Doug Averill, global government based out of Waltham headquarters here, and been with Pega for about 10 years.
Excellent. Well, let's do that around the corner if everybody doesn't mind. Steve Morgan on the Pega Partner Hour. Why don't you say hello to everybody for me?
Hey there, great to be here, Andy. Yeah, I lead the banking industry segment. I've got about 15 years actual in industry and banking, where I used to work on lending and operations, and then another 15 years in consulting before joining Pega. Great to be here.
Thanks for being here. Ryan, say hello to everybody.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invite, Randy, and love to be with my fellow colleagues. We always have a good conversation when we're together, sometimes a little heated and passionate, but we get there. But I'm Ryan Walton King. I was with AT&T for 25 years. I joined Pega coming up on 4 years ago. Actually started in more of a sales role and then moved into the industry role, and I lead global media and comms for Pega.
Awesome. And Mr. Doug Stitzer, if you could say hello.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Glad to be here. So very similar to my peers here, I spent 2 decades on the business side. For me, it was the carrier side of insurance before jumping into what I affectionately call the dark side of technology. and have been in that space now for 6 years, 4 of it leading the helm for Pega and insurance.
Nice. All right. So I want to remind everybody who's listening on the call today, probably this is your best chance to hit the Q&A and get some questions answered. But until you do, we've got some things we want to talk about. Let's jump right in and start with Steve. Steve, what are some of the standout experiences you think you've had with your partners this year in your industry?
Well, thanks for asking that. I mean, there was one thing I was thinking when Doug was talking about our role. It's really important. We're also a bit of the glue for Pega in terms of encouraging our sales teams and anyone who's client facing to think about partners because of the vast breadth of what they do, the knowledge, the connections they have into the clients, and of course, their advisory and delivery capabilities. Some of the standout things for me this year, this is the first year when Pega's, I think, really started to get more and more serious about partners, and we signed 2 strategic collaboration agreements with AWS first, and then with Infosys, and the plan is to do more with more partners. Why is that important, and why is it so different for us? It's making a real solid commitment about, on our side, growth aspirations, on the partner side, growth aspirations, where we'll co-invest together, where we'll market together. And as a result of those, I think it definitely forces us to get more disciplined around working together early to define strategies, co-selling motions, and then eventual sales success. So for me, that would probably be the biggest standout thing. The one other thing I'd mention is that most, but not all of the partners, most of them have done, I think, a better job this year of trying to stay connected to Pega, find out what's going on, sometimes asking the industry teams to help with that, sometimes asking for introductions to different teams. So I think there's been a noticeable increase in that, which is great.
Thank you very much, Steve. Ryan, same question to you. What is some of the best experiences you've had with partners this year?
So I'll give one example that we had. You know, in the comms industry, one of our big consortiums is the TM Forum, and it's a global consortium where it really sets the standards for where comms is going in the future. A lot of adoption still needs to happen. It's all about autonomous operations and bringing that autonomous enterprise to light. And basically, what we were able to do with a partner, both a hyperscaler partner as well as an SI, we were able to build a really solid solution for the events this year. And we presented those events in Copenhagen, in the Americas, and in Bangkok last week or the week before. And what's been really great about it is we took that project and now we've come up with clients that we're working together to go and tackle. We're being very focused on which clients and which teams we're working with, and we're really driving pipeline. And I think what's most critical when I'm working with partners is that we get out of the PowerPoints and we get into tangible opportunities as quickly as possible. And we start to show the real power of our partnership coming together. And until we get there, we just don't cut it. We've got to get to that as quickly as possible.
And I always say there's no presentation at Pega it's not complete if we don't talk a little bit about Blueprint, right? And Blueprint is a great way to get out of the PowerPoint, right? It's a great way to just take it away. You answer that question better than I could. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Blueprint is a no-brainer, and I'm sure somebody will touch on it in this conversation, but it really gets you out of that PowerPoint, and it starts to get you out of the defensive brain of this is what I do today and this is what I own today with a client to a very creative space of opportunity. And if you know anything about growth mindset, into a growth mindset area, which is so important for innovation and moving into the future. So yeah, Blueprints.
There's one bit on Blueprint, Randy and Ryan, I want to chip in on that I think the partners play a key role in. And that is when we're working together with a partner and looking at how a process could be re-engineered with the client, and you get to the stage on Blueprint where you've got the process stages, the steps within it. At that point, you want to have a discussion with the client about, I don't know, service levels, automation levels, what needs to be done by a person, what should be automated, what could be automated. And whilst we'll have a view on it, and we've got some industry experts like my colleagues here and a few others in the team, we're a much smaller team than the industry experts and the partners. And that's a key area where partners can really help and really make sure that the right solution and the right outcomes are going to happen, like Ryan said.
Yeah, I love that. You know, in talking to me, that kind of runs to something I was thinking about earlier. Doug Stitzer, I used to be in the insurance industry, so I kind of, that's held close to me a lot of times. And um, man, it's just got to be a whole new world out there. And I'm wondering, how are you and your partners, are you running into how Gen AI is kind of changing the game for underwriting and claims and how they're processing them and how you're attacking that with both the partners and the clients?
It's a great question. I mean, the quick answer is yes. But and I'll say this with nothing but love and respect for the industry that's been so good to me. Insurance watches from the sidelines for a while. You know, it's heavily regulated, as most of our industries are, and it's the most risk averse. And so there's a hesitancy, and I think, you know, some of that, I think AI has earned its badge of being sometimes less than predictable, and that scares a lot of insurers. And so I think folks are dipping their toes in the water versus going all in. And where we've really tried to encourage Pega with our partners to be a differentiator is by getting AI and Gen AI in as early as possible in the submission process. Sometimes people will want to go, and you touched on, Randy, experts. You know, you typically walk into an insurance company and somebody like an underwriter or a claims adjuster has gray hair and they have years and years of expertise and specialization that they've built up. And those people need AI and Gen AI. But the reality is, if we can bring AI into the case during the submission process with Pega, we can change the trajectory of that much faster and determine whether or not that specialist even needs to see that body of work. Maybe it's something that shouldn't reach his or her inbox. And so we're really trying to, with our partners, change how people work and what those processes look like, not just the tooling.
Doug, the most surprising thing about that is you've been in insurance so long and you gave a short answer and you said yes rather than no. Amazing.
Well, it's a forced change. Look, we've seen more happen technologically in the last 18 months than any time in my career, and it's exciting. And so people know that they have to adopt it. The speed of it, I think the tech will always outpace it. In insurance, probably not the same for some of the other industries, but it is an exciting time.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say, right, everybody at this point is regulated, right? Like I think um, Doug Averill, you'd agree, right? The government is all the governments, they have a pretty hard and fast set of circumstances that they got to work around when it comes to being secure and making sure the right things are in place. Um, what are they doing as it relates to AI, and what are they doing as it relates to, you know, how we try to offer them things that are newer in terms of cutting edge technology?
Yeah, as I was smiling as Doug was talking about the highly regulated, like we are the regulators, right? And I'm fortunate to travel around the globe and meet with a lot of our government clients. And one of the reasons I'm always conscious of going a couple times a year to Australia, New Zealand is for years they were 5 years ahead of what everyone else was doing. And what was really interesting in the last, frankly, 18 months, I think is the right time frame, completely flipped. So we've got now the US is in the lead, the US government, when it comes to AI implementation. We had the Secretary of Transportation in the US talk about nothing can go live unless it has an AI component in it. And I say this to say that it's just dynamic. Like part of what we're doing, and I think, you know, all of us and Robert, who's not on the call, covers healthcare, we talk all the time to be able to say what's trending, what are you seeing? Because, you know, insurance is going to be in one place for a while and then it'll swing back. You know, who's adopting what, you know, who's risk averse, who's really leaning into it, and what are they asking for? That's kind of what we do. Bringing it back to the partners, can't do any of it unless we're actively listening and working with them. They really are in the field, tip of the spear, keeping smart with the day to day, you know, what our clients actually doing. And is, I think it was you, Steve, had mentioned, maybe it was Ryan, that, you know, the partner piece of bringing in that intellectual property to a blueprint, that's what they do. Like there are 50 different sort of domain areas in any given vertical. We're never going to be deep in all of those, and we're always going to need a partner to take us in, listen how things are trending, where are people going, and then our job, as I mentioned sort of on the kickoff, is to make sure that Pega is not just keeping up, but really continuing to lead in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, and especially, go ahead, Ryan, after you.
I would just add on, I was going to add on when Steve mentioned partners bringing in their knowledge. The best experiences that I've had at Pega working with a client is when we have that shared knowledge between the Pega resources and the partner resources. Look, Pega is a skill set, right? Just like our competitors are. You need to know how to use Pega to make it really successful and to do it quickly. Our partners have the industry knowledge. They have oftentimes a lot more butts and seats at the client site. So they're hearing the day-to-day interactions with the client. At AT&T, I had partners that sat all around me all the time. And so they knew exactly what was going on. So when we bring those knowledgeable resources together and we work as one team, bringing together that knowledge, I think that's where we really excel together. And that's something that I would love to continue to strengthen is how do we form these teams? How do we make sure that we're bringing the teams together versus an us-them type setup?
And let's add on to that. And I'm curious what all of you think about this, but Ryan, you touch on it. If you're a partner, like, what's a best practice look like in terms of working with you and your teams?
I can take that, or somebody else want to chime in. I'm
Yeah,
happy to.
I'd be curious because I suspect everybody's answer might be a little bit different, probably have some baseline similarities. But yeah, Ryan, let's start with you and go around on that.
Yeah, I mean, so I have to look at it in a couple of different ways. One is how do I work with the industry expertise at a partner, and then the other view I would say is how do we actually deliver projects? On the working together as an industry team, regular cadence, right? Regular discussion around what we're seeing in the industry, not just opportunity based, but looking together further out than the current opportunity and really developing where can our strategies come together to deliver value to the client. On the execution piece, it's really where I see the partner having the bulk of the execution skill sets within Pega, but us having some key roles as advisory skills to make sure that as we're designing the applications that we're building them in a very reusable framework so that we set the client up for success to more quickly adopt and then build future value on Pega. And so that mixed team is really important. My 2 cents. Somebody else.
Doug Stitzer, let's see what you say with that.
Yeah, I think for me, and I like the way Ryan unpacked it. I don't focus so much on execution because I think our partners do such an amazing job there. For me, it's about how are we packing the funnel with more business that benefits all of us. And for me, it's about, when I think back to, and I think this is part of your first question, Randy, when I think back this year to some of the best partner co-sales that we've had, the ones that stand out are where we've done the planning and the time together for that org to go in and make sure we're singing from the same choir book, but B, we're doing it with specificity. We're cutting through the noise that exists in the market. Because let's face it, there's a lot of people, whether they are or they perceive to be Pega competitors, say some of the same things that we do. And that could be around our use of agents. It could be a simple term like workflow. There's a lot of people that throw that term out. What does that actually mean when you get under the hood? So going in with specificity about the value that we provide to the business, not just during the build, but long term after they've years into that deployment. I think that's a huge differentiator, and being able to go in and do that together in a way that's compelling is what's going to crank out new business for all of us. Those are the ones. I know it sounds very cliche. It sounds easy to say that, but the devil's in the details, and the partners that are willing to take that journey, oftentimes not just with the account team, but with our industry teams and building out those point of views, is where we have the faster deal cycles and the larger success.
Yeah, I love it. Steve, I think I cut you off when we put Doug in.
No, I was still trying to come to terms with the fact that Doug Averill had used dynamic and government in the same sentence. But anyway, I'll move past that quickly. For me, I'll pick up on a couple of things colleagues said and just add slight different angle to it. Ryan mentioned cadence, and honestly, one of the questions myself and my colleagues in my team asked all the banking salespeople is, are you meeting with the partners as often as you're meeting with the client? That doesn't necessarily imply the other way around. It has to be the same on the partner side, but I really want everyone listening to know that we're trying to encourage our teams to have that cadence and engage early, like Doug was saying. The other thing I think that we can help with, that we try and do, is when we know a partner's got a certain strategy, they want to break in and succeed in certain areas of, say, banking, then we try and map Pega against it, which touches a bit on what Doug was saying, where we might fit in, where we can work best together. So we did, just to give a real example, we did this with Capgemini early in the year, where their global lead, Gareth Wilson, had 5 broad areas where they wanted to focus. So we just mapped underneath, where's the key areas where Pega's strong, where we're differentiated, and where we can help. And I think that cuts across all partners. If we do that, some of that strategic target thinking, and then get the cadence and stuff working early and well, then we can all succeed much more. Over to dynamic government, Doug, for the last
Dynamic
comment.
government. Yeah, I mean, that's a very broad question. Sort of what does good look like in that? I think just generally in government, my view is we have amazing differentiated technology that can be applied in many, many different areas. So our job really is to help partners wherever they are and however they differentiate in the market, to really drive value to those clients. So, for example, sometimes a partner in government is how a government entity will buy. Sometimes it's what they buy, if it's a BPO. Some partners are actually specializing in top secret cleared resources. Our job is to give them what they need and make sure that we are actively next to them as they go into those areas. And ultimately, growth of Pega is going to continue to have to really rely on those partners using Pega to deliver value to those clients.
Hey, Doug, you made me think something there when you were talking like on that is that for me, I think one thing we're not doing enough of, we need to be more ambitious, is larger scale, truly transformative projects with partners, where there's maybe multiple systems, multiple processes to be re-engineered and changed. I think we're doing a good job on the small and medium size, but I think there's scope for. Would you guys agree? I mean,
I completely agree with that, Steve. And I think sometimes just amongst us and our broader family, we look at sort of the projects that we're working on. And at Pega, at least I think, boy, this is huge. But if you step back, if you're the end client, if you're the government, in my case, it's just a small part of a massive transformation with a very large ecosystem. Actually implementing that and doing the migrations and everything else is a huge part of that. I completely agree.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I think the thing that we're seeing in the comms industry is, because they've gone for these major transformational plays and so many of them have failed or not given the value that they expected, there's a little bit of pullback on the size of the transformation deal. So I think that's what we're adjusting to, is we want to get more into larger transformation deals, but we also want to make sure that we're delivering the value that we're committing to deliver. So finding that balance with a partner is super important.
Let me ask you guys all a question, and it's a challenging question because my specialty within the partner alliance team is our emerging partners, some of the smaller Pega practices sometimes. And that's not to say there's not some really great ones that are at the high end of that, and there are. But one of the complaints I often get from the small partners is that it's hard to break into a particular industry or even a particular account because there might be a large that effectively owns it. And I'm going to start with Doug Averill because I think there's a better way in, because you've got government set asides and you've got people who have specialties. If I was a partner and I said it's hard for me to break in as a small partner into your industry, what would you say?
I mean, the way to actually do that is to find your niche. I mean, the value is you've got blueprint, so you can bake your intellectual property into that. You can go to market with something that might be a narrow lane, but very deep. So how do you do that? You figure out where you want to go, what your play is, and use Randy, folks like you to help let everyone know across those different account teams what is the value this particular partner might bring. The ones you describe, Randy, are really critical. Don't know about the other verticals, but absolutely critical to government, because they're delivering those specialized resources, relationships, and knowledge that Pega is not going to necessarily bring to the table around that. So we definitely rely on that cohort.
Yeah, I like that. Doug
But
Stitzer.
I'd like to jump in on that.
Sure.
Sorry,
Go
Doug.
ahead, Steve. No,
Uh,
Steve, please.
So I worked at two large consultancies, and I'll say who it was. It was EY and Capgemini for like nearly 15 years, and then I was on the buying side, where I was buying consultancy advice and systems implementation projects. And now I've dealt with the large, but also the smaller and medium size that you're talking about. And I can tell you very clearly, for me, as from the buyer point of view, it links a little bit to one of the things Doug said. He said, it's finding a niche. You're buying either capability, IP, and it's usually delivered by people, and you're usually paying for the people in a project. And you want people who've done it before in your industry, in that use case, in that domain, in that area. If they haven't done it before, or if there's not a certain number of people who've done it before and got specialization, why would you buy those people? Why would you buy that project? And it's the same as if you're buying from a big provider. If they don't bring people with experience or bring that IP, bring that capability, or there's something defined you can buy from them, there's no differentiation. If there's no differentiation, you go with whoever's in front of you who's got that differentiation and expertise.
Doug, your thoughts.
Yeah, Steve stole part of my answer. So
Sorry.
interject, buddy. Look, let me just put a wrapper on it, because like
I knew what you were going to say.
I was on the buying side for most of my career, and I've hired boutiques. I've hired some of the largest firms that we also partner with at Pega, and everybody in between. And it's as simple as this. Yes, you do business with people at the end of the day, but the folks that could land the message of "I know you, I get you, I got you." And if there's a couple of those that meet all that criteria, then maybe you're finally down to price. But that's ultimately, at the end of the day, what you want to do. And a lot of that comes from storytelling. And so when I think about some of our roles, because we are global in nature for our industries, is, a lot of times our partners, or especially boutiques, are locked geographically. And our ability to share scalable stories that help unlock the value and provide some credibility about what it is that Pega can do is enormous. So I think that ability to coach and work together on what those are is really impactful. But I agree with Averill where he started, which is, don't say you can do it all. Know where your strengths are.
Yeah.
And I would just
Doug,
plus
when
one
you
before
were
you
buying,
go
can
there.
I ask? Sorry, I was going to say, Doug, when you were buying, can I ask? Was one of your things when I got you, was it like sort of certainty of delivery, like minimizing risk or something?
It was part of it, though. It goes back to what Averill and you said, which is, I've done this before. It's not an art of the possible. There's an element of been there, done that. What I didn't like was hearing, every partner would come in and say, "Hey, we've got our programmatic way we do stuff, and it's different and special and it's unique." And I'd always put up my hand and say, yeah. I don't care if you get your team together and do hot yoga together to start your day. I just care about results. So that's the "I got you." It's not we have a method. It's that you've done it. You've got proven success in it, and I feel safe. And the other part of that, eventually we'll get into the contract, but that's where it starts.
Well, and I always worry, particularly outside of government, this seems like there's always room for a small because of set asides and all sorts of different things like that. But when you're in the other industries, right? When you're in banking and media and insurance and stuff, a lot of times we see you might have one master, huge partner, and other partners, whether they're small or just different. I'm not sure there's always a way to get into that account. And if there is, the way in isn't to say, I can do something better than that guy, right? You're insulting the people they're using right now. And there's got to be a better way to show differentiation rather than saying something that's, downsiding the
You can always fill gaps as well, Randy. There's always gaps. There's always gaps in expertise or gaps or something. So you can always try and fill gaps, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I think too, Randy, if I can piggyback on Steve, I think there's also, I don't know if my peers are seeing this, I'm seeing less and less big bangs. So the other part of it is there's always a program in place. There's always something coming next. So rather than trying to fight over what's currently in flight, have a point of view on the 3 things that you know are coming on the heels of the next phase of this project, and get in front of that as your sale.
Completely. That's
Yeah,
right.
the 2 things that come to mind for me are, one, relationship. That's how I always saw a boutique get into AT&T. It was having the relationship at the right level, which is a very high level, that was willing to take the risk and had believability that consulting, boutique consulting company was actually going to help them meet their goal. And so that was really important. And I think the other thing that I saw a lot of, which I know is sometimes not the best alternative, but it was working with one of the SIs that did have a big, strong footprint and subcontracting under them to get their name known. And once they got their name known, then they could break out. And I think that's really, and then there's a third one that I was thinking about, actually, it's timing. If the client you're trying to get into, especially for comms, just went through a major outsourcing deal where there's a cycle to this, right? We allow a bunch of different consulting firms, and then we say, oh, that's costing us too much. Now let's get it back down to the top 3, and then we do these deals. If it's just after one of those deals, it's going to be really hard to get in because everybody's focused on staying within the boundaries of those 3 deals. If it's 6 months, 8 months later, those boundaries are starting to fade. And people are now opening up to swinging back to having more consultants. And that's an opportunity. So look at timing of contracts and when those deals are written, and make sure that you're spending your efforts at the right time.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I want to jump into one of the Q&A questions that came in, but before I do, I need to point out that hashtag I know you, I get you, I got you is now trending. And my team is just popping it up on my internal chat. They love that, Doug. You should know that. The question is, and we'll do a round robin on this one too. What are your, and they may be similar, but what are your top 3 use cases in each of your respective industries that you see coming for 2026? Let's start with Steve.
I've got an easy answer for you on this one, because we have a quarterly partner advisory group, as my other colleagues do as well. And I actually tested looking at our pipeline forward looking for the next 2 years and against partners, a selection of 10 different partners, what they saw as the biggest areas. And there was unanimous for 3 things around banking. One was, I'll put 2 of them together, like customer service and operations, those 2 areas, about fully re-engineering them, bringing in AI agents where possible, applying automation in other areas where you don't necessarily need an AI agent or anything AI at all. So customer service and ops, and part of the reason for that is the still ongoing margin pressure in the business for banks, the shrinking margins, and the increased competition in an environment where there is reduced lending and other product expansion opportunities. So that's those 2, customer service ops. The third one, customer engagement, very broad term. But anywhere you might touch a customer. And in banking, one of the big reasons for that is there's still a shift going away from branches and in person to digital. And even though the banks have a majority of their stuff going through app in terms of interactions, you're now looking at the medium to high complexity stuff. Can it be done remotely? Can it be done digitized? So that customer engagement piece of not just decisioning, but actions and servicing and help. Those would be the top 3 for sure.
Love that. Ryan, what do you see
Yeah,
as your top 3?
Sure. So we're talking about it across kind of 3 areas. One is around growth. And this is really in the B2B space. That's where we're seeing most, and realize that in regions there are some differences. So let me put that disclaimer out there. B2B growth is a huge opportunity, and that's just continuing to build on asset monetization and the network investments that have been made over the years. So how do we actually make 5G come to life? We've been talking about use cases for a long time, but how do we actually use that as a growth engine? The second one is all around efficiency, and this is really around zero-touch operations and modernizing legacy. So how can we continue to transition from human-assisted to really agentic AI and get to that autonomous enterprise from an operational perspective? And then the last one is around experience. And in the comms industry, we have a large footprint in customer engagement, and how do you interact with that customer in real time based on that customer versus on campaign type management. And when you think about experience, because of the slow growth in the industry, there's really a focus on monetizing and making sure that you're reducing your churn for your existing customers, and then continuing to figure out how do we get more proactive in customer service versus reactive.
Like that. Doug, how do you see that in the insurance industry? What are the top 3 use cases you see happening there?
Yeah, I'm going to give you my list in reverse order in terms of priority. I would say one that is going to persist in 26 and beyond is going to be legacy transformation. We saw most insurers over the last 5 to 10 years make huge investments in their policy claim and billing admin systems, but there's a ton of other applications that exist that are keeping the lights on, but they're dated and they really can't bring AI in at scale, or even sometimes tools like Pega until those legacy applications are addressed. Blueprint and Pega can play an enormous role in accelerating transformation for insurers. So that's one big category. The other 2 I'll give you, and I'm going to give you 2.5 to kind of round out the list. The second one is claims. That for us takes on a couple different flavors depending on whether it's P&C and life, but there's an area that touches both within claims where Pega has a chance to be both proactive and then supportive throughout the process, and that's for catastrophic events. Severe weather is something that touches every single group of policyholders, regardless of continent, and those incidents are only on the rise. It's the biggest hit every year to the income statement from a claims perspective for most insurers. So that's an area where Pega has an opportunity to play an enormous role. And then lastly, it's our number 1. There's nothing hotter than underwriting. And again, for life, it's probably a little bit more focused on intake. For P&C, it's a little bit more about the risk decisioning portion of the process. But that's how insurers make money. And
Nothing
so,
hotter than underwriting. Segue to dynamic government.
There is nothing hotter than underwriting. That's no one ever. Top 3. And this is always a tough one because, I mean, everyone knows government kind of does a little bit of everything, but just sort of what are we seeing trending? Recruiting and HR, there's a lot of HRMSs and those systems tend to be kind of silos versus we want to have a very seamless journey of outbound recruiting, onboarding employees, service members, things like that. There's a lot of action around that. Adding a lot of agentic capabilities. We're still adding Knowledge Buddy and things like that to existing systems as sort of either an extension of the work we're doing or as an entry point. A lot of value there. Sort of the continued growth, the meaty part of our growth is in enterprise case management, which is, I know, a little generic, but that is actually how the government thinks about it. It is how do we move work across silos, across the entire enterprise, and we are really, really the best at that. But given the stage, I'll give you sort of the fastest emerging. So that was my 3+1, Randy, for the win, is a lot of growing interest in provider government healthcare, social services. All of that is huge, from conversations with departments of health, the NHS, actually delivering healthcare to people within single payer and in the U.S. Military, things like that. So we're seeing a lot of action there.
Well, and listen, I'd add in, right? Everybody knows Pega doesn't have 100% of each one of these markets. And we don't have 50% of each one of these markets, right? So when people say, what are the 3 best use cases and how do I get involved? And those become the questions. It's kind of what you were just saying. Just go find it. It's there. You got to go have these conversations. And that's what this is about, is facilitating different avenues where you can do that.
Well, hey, Randy, can I just quickly, I wanted to say this before when we were talking, what's really helpful, and I think Doug Stitzer hit on this, because we're talking to folks globally, almost 5-6 days a week, is we have a line of sight to what is trending, what people are working on. So if a partner is interested in, hey, I have capabilities here, where could I apply those? I love those conversations because I can tell you what's trending and where to engage and even make those introductions. And on the flip side, we're watching problems emerge, and there are places where we can in turn kind of quarterly, we're meeting with a partner, for instance, say, have you guys thought about this as a particular area? Because I'm seeing it trending and it aligns well with your capabilities. So I'm always open. I find huge value in sort of that strategic planning with partners.
Excellent. Hey, Doug, the next question that came up in the Q&A talks a little bit about public sector. So I'm going to keep you on live here. And the question is, and it may be more of a question for me, frankly, but it says, does Pega have an appetite to provide air cover to partner collaboration where specialist skills are sometimes precluded from working with public sector type organizations because of the complex procurement frameworks that sometimes might mean that choices aren't only made on capability alone? And I'll tell you how I read that question is, do we have a appetite to provide air cover or collaboration? I'll tell you, yes. We put partners together all the time. I mean, I think it was just less than 12 months ago, a couple of my counterparts put a couple of very large integrators, and we had a small business day, and we probably brought in 20 small businesses and let them all pick each other's brain. And there was business that came out of that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious spot on, yes is the answer. And I would extend it by saying we also look at making sure that we're reaching out even across verticals. I look at, one of the things that's definitely trending globally is collections for us. I talked to Steve's team about collections quite a bit. What are the partners? What are the skills? How do we make sure we're delivering those outcomes and things like that? So spot on.
Yeah, excellent. There's a question that came in that I think follows through to my always talk about blueprint and then always talk about Pega World. The question is, what are your respective recommendations for partners to get their best value at Pega World? And can the partners get their help with client meetings? They can do that by registering early, certainly, if people know you're there. But what's your best recommendations on getting best value at Pega World, particularly in industries? I know government is tough because it's hard for them to get out to Vegas.
One of the key components for me is planning early. Like let's start those conversations now. Let's get a common view of where we see your skill sets and our skill sets coming together. And then let's start laying the groundwork to actually get those clients to Pega World together and the subsequent meetings. I find a lot of times it's a last thought versus an earlier thought, and that just really doesn't work because of capacity and just doesn't get the result we expect.
I've got two things I'd add, Randy, is that what I've seen good partners doing really well at Pega World, which they can plan early, like Ryan said is I've had a few sessions where partners have got multiple clients, usually no more than 3, so they can talk to each other together with the partner because there's some shared topic they want to talk about outside of the Pega World events and everything, just book one of the meeting rooms, and then they usually get not just the clients, but they get someone from one of the industry teams to come as well in case there's anything they can chip in from other clients. That's really good. Clients love that, sharing stories in small groups. The other one is linked to what Ryan said about planning is we've now got public the list of all the client breakouts. And whilst everyone looks at the main stage being the big events, for me, the client breakouts have more stats, more outcomes. And so the partners can obviously look at what other clients are going and what they're going to be talking about, and to their own clients and their colleagues say, hey, let's go and listen, let's go and learn about that. It's great.
Yeah, and I think those are probably universal answers for everybody. Doug, Averill, just let's knock this one out while we have you. How have you used your colleagues on this call to present best practices into the U.S. public sector is the question.
Yeah, I mean, it happens quite frequently. It's typically at the department or program level. I can think of something that we worked on that was cross-functional. I actually had 2 other verticals with me, and we were speaking to a client about sort of an end-to-end solution involved both healthcare and insurance. We were doing that at Pega World, then following up. So we collaborate all the time. There are meetings that are both sort of outcome and domain focused. So like, how are we delivering on collections as an example, or how are we delivering on a particular government sponsored insurance solution? We talk about those, and then collaborate on not only calls like this, but also when it comes to sessions at Pega World, when we do joint webinars and things like that. So yeah, I would say there's quite a bit. I feel blessed to be able to, because government covers so many things, to be able to have such an easy relationship with not only the people on this call and Robert, who wasn't able to make it, but their extended teams. It's really sort of that cross-functional, cross-vertical thing that I think makes Pega special.
Doug, I think one of the cool things is sometimes when we're able to introduce clients from different regions and different industries to chat about the same sort of challenge, that's pretty good.
Absolutely. I think just last night, Ryan helped me introduce one of his verticals clients with one of my clients because they had a common sort of technical approach and interest. I mean, a perfect example of how we can help.
When the other thing right there, Doug, to that point, not just our partners, but a lot of people think these problems that we have in our respective industries happen in a vacuum. But if you've got a problem that you're trying to solve with Pega in insurance, you may have that same problem in banking or even in government, right? Like fundamentally, there are data problems that people need to work through, and finding a way to, use workflows to make life a little bit easier, make business better, is a foundational thing of what we do across all industries. It's not one industry singularly has a problem typically. So it's worth noting that. Steve and I were talking earlier, and I'll let Steve have first go at this, but it's a good question, I think, for everybody. Of all the things I kind of thought about we should talk about, this was really one of my more favorite thought processes. And asking you gentlemen, what do you wish that our partners knew or did more with Pega than what they know or what they're doing? What do we really wish our partners did more at?
I had no idea which question he was going to ask there. What I wish they did more of. Honestly, for me, it's getting more disciplined and well organized around what we're targeting where, and planning and preparation, what discovery we can do together. When we do that well on an account, we succeed and we win and we beat the rest of the competition by far. If we don't, like, meet early, get to know each other early, get to know our positions in the account, ask the right discovery questions, jointly develop the relationship, like Ryan was saying, to develop the trust. If we don't do that early, we're scrambling. So for me, it's all about that organization, discipline, and probably research, because if you don't have the right discovery and research, you can't help the client get a great business case, and you can't help satisfy why we can do it best. So I'd like us to be doing more of that better across all of our regions and accounts.
I would completely agree with that. I think one of the things we know that there is virtually unlimited addressable market for this. So where you can grow the fastest is by really communicating, here's the lane, a little bit like Stitzer was saying before, and Ryan, we don't do it, don't come in and say you can do everything. Say, here's what I do really well, and here's how we do it. Focus it, get a lot of velocity in that. Just stay super focused and disciplined, just like you said, Steve, on that. That's where I see the biggest growth. And when partners win, Pega wins. So that's what I would want to see more of.
Yeah. Randy, I thought you were going to ask us a hard question, like, what do we want for Christmas? So I was thinking about that as you were forming your question.
Go on, Ryan, tell us, what do you really want? Come on.
What do I really want for Christmas? Somebody asked me this. I was at a Santa picture thing yesterday at our PTA, and a kid asked me, what do you want for Christmas? And I looked at him, I said, world peace. And he just looked at me like, oh, that is so boring. I was like, it's actually not. But anyway, I would love our partners to help us differentiate. Pega is an amazing platform that can solve so many problems, and that's both a pro and a con.
Right.
And so helping us think through a story around differentiation and representing that well with our clients, I think sets us up far better than we are today.
My answer, Ryan, was actually going to complement yours, which is, I think there's more that we could do. I can't remember which of you referenced this in your answer before, but from just a volume of human resource standpoint, our partners as an ecosystem have a larger chorus available than Pega does. I would love to see us doing more at a grander scale in terms of publishing and on stage together, to use the megaphones that some of our partners have to tell these stories, to bring that clarity to the differentiation, and to really make sure that the industry sees us together, but primarily our partners, as thought leaders. It's not a Me Too moment. It's we have something really unique and special that we can do together. How do we make sure that message is heard at scale?
Yeah, and to jump onto that, right? I've always said, people will say, oh, you do what Salesforce does, or, you do, there's four of us that they bring up. Let's leave the names out. But the fact is, I would tell you we're very specific in what we do, and the way we do it, more importantly, is different than them. And when someone says we're in competition with them, we might be because people say it, but I think it's incumbent upon us. It's going to be one of my goals in 2026 is to really point out the differences and where we shine. I remember when I got hired here years ago, that was a tagline: Pega can do everything. And I'll never forget, Doug, I don't think you ever heard this, but I called in an Army general like the first week I got out of training. And he said, son, what do you do? I said, we can do anything. And he said, can you change my oil? And he said, you need a better opening line, son. And I was like, good point. And I think it still stands today. Like, we have some very specific things that we do really, really well. And more importantly, when you put us up against other competition, we do it better than them. And I think that's something that we really want to talk about in the future with our
Randy, there's one other thing we can do to bring that to life with partners that we haven't done a great job on, and partners can help with this, is co-branding of case studies and making sure that that we go from an outcome focus of what we've helped clients achieve. That's the first thing. We have a lot of clients at Pega World who are willing to speak openly about really brilliant results, better than our competition. And if we can then do a better job of making sure when we go to market, the market understands that was Pega plus who? The partner name, the hyperscaler we're relevant. We are going to spend more on branding as a company, so the partners will be happy to hear that. But we want to do more, I think, co-branding. And links to what Doug said about being on stage and doing things together, thought leadership.
Yeah, look, I'll double down on. I'd love nothing more, and I'll only speak for insurance right here. These guys, thankfully, I'm out of reach for them to chuck anything at me. I'd love to have a healthy scheduling conflict in 2026, because so many of the partners on this call today raise their hand and say, come present with me. And here's where, and here's when, and here's what customer we're going to bring up to bring added weight to our story. I'd love my calendar to be dominated with those types of events. If we do, we're going to be printing cash together for a long time.
I love it. I'm just looking at the clock. We got 5 minutes left. So I'm going to put aside my questions here that you guys have done a great thing. And I figure let's go around one more round robin and maybe just tie up what we've said today with your thoughts that we maybe haven't hit. If there's any burning thought in your mind, let's let them hear it now, right? We still got all our partners on. And when we put this up on the partner portal, you're going to hear a lot of talk about people coming back and watching this particular video, because I really think there's going to be a lot of eye-opening things that came out of this. A lot of our partners, I frankly don't think really understood how well they could leverage the knowledge that's on the screen right now. And that's why I wanted so badly to get you guys on here. So if we could kind of go around the room one more time before we run out of time and start with Ryan and give some closing thoughts.
I'm a sole believer we win with partners, and that's a with, and it must be a with together. And I believe that the muscle that we need to build together is an execution muscle, one that starts with planning and then executes, and that we get on a cadence that allows us to win together. And once we do that, I'm confident we will win.
Like that. Steve, your thoughts?
I think I'd like the audience to really know and feel in the next 12 to 24 months that Pega really is changing in its attitude and approach with partners. I mentioned the collaboration agreements, but it's not just that. The way we're going to reorganize, the way we're going to measure ourselves and our success is through our interactions and how we go to market with partners. And that has to be proven by actions, but I can tell the audience that's listening now and on recording that we are looking at our org structures, roles, how we work with partners internally, and really trying to double down on that. And we're also talking about growth rates, which frankly we won't achieve without partners. So that would be my final thought.
Like that. Doug Stitzer.
Yeah, I guess my other ask, and as I'm looking to the future, agree with all the answers that have been given, is just don't be quiet skeptics. Be really vocal about how it is that we as an industry team can be helping you make the sale, the differentiation, everything that we've talked about, the product even easier. And if that means, Randy advertised earlier in the call that he has a regular with Alan Treffler, then you should use Randy and Alan to surface some of those conversations too, to make sure that at all levels of Pega that your ideas are being heard. My guess is that a lot of you have some of the same feedback. Let's go deliver it together. but it's not going to happen unless you're using your powerful voice to speak truth into how we can be successful together.
Awesome. And let's finish where we started. You have the floor, Mr. Averill.
I'll just keep it super short. I mean, what I'm feeling, what everyone on this call is feeling is disruption, change, and a huge market opportunity for all of us. And all of it comes through partners at this point. So I am incredibly excited through all of this for the next 18 to 24 months. We are going to be on a wave, and we are going to be able to say we were there when, because we're about to go through a couple of step changes of growth together as an entire ecosystem. So I'm super excited. Let's stay focused, disciplined, and really keep the communication channels open, because that's how we're going to grow together.
I love it. Well, hey, gentlemen, thank you very much. That brings us to the close of this holiday edition of the Pega Partner Hour. Thanks to everybody who shows up here month to month, especially John Lynch. And of course, today, Doug Averill, Ryan Walton King, Doug Stitzer, and Steve Morgan. I can't thank you gentlemen enough for taking the time out of your calendar to meet with the partners. We see you again next year on January 9th. Spoiler alert, we're bringing back Karim Agnul to start off the new year. So if you see me before then, please stop and say hello. Until then, sell and be well. Thank you very much for joining. We really appreciate you.
Hello.
Randy.